"We don't tolerate garbage in here. Take your busted wallet somewhere else." Marcus Delgado, floor manager of the Harborside, an upscale bar in Boston's financial district, curled his lip at the man in scuffed work boots and a ripped canvas jacket. The guy looked like he'd slept outside, completely out of place among the attorneys and analysts dropping hundreds on craft cocktails after market close. Marcus already regretted seating him. Low spenders ruined his numbers and his carefully curated image. The man stayed put, shoulders hunched, quietly ordering a glass of water and a side of fries, the cheapest thing on the menu. Naomi Carter, a black waitress grinding through her 6th straight double, watched from across the bar. She knew Marcus's routine: humiliate the wrong customers to protect the high-end vibe. But something in this man's exhausted posture echoed memories of herself. Instead of looking away, she grabbed her notepad, squared her tired shoulders, and walked over to take his order. What she chose to do next, how she answered his hesitant request, would leave him stunned, silent, his mouth moving without sound. Neither of them could possibly know that this single interaction would ripe open a secret that had been quietly bleeding the staff dry. Across town, Daniel Harper sat alone in his 14th floor corner office, Boston city lights glittering behind him like another spreadsheet. The Harborside's neon sign glowed faintly in the distance, a reminder of his father's dream. It was a little after 9 on a Tuesday night, long after the financial district had emptied out. Usually Daniel would have gone home hours earlier. Tonight, though, an email had landed in his inbox that pinned him to his chair. The sender was anonymous. The subject line read, "Check the tip pool." He opened it again, even though he'd already reread it several times, hoping he'd misread something that would make the unease in his chest disappear. The message itself was brutally short, a single accusing sentence and 3 attached images. "They're stealing from us." The first attachment showed a photo of the schedule board, smudged marker lines and last-minute changes. Naomi Carter's name scratched out, her Friday night double replaced with a dead Monday lunch. Olivia Reyes moved off Saturday dinner into Tuesday breakfast. Both money shifts erased by someone with manager-level access, the kind of edits Daniel thought he'd delegated to responsible hands. The second attachment was a screenshot of small bank deposits hitting a personal account. Every amount sat carefully under $1,000. $835 on October 31st, $890 on November 3rd, $1,235 on November 7th. Odd numbers that didn't match payroll or vendor payments. The third photo made his jaw clench. A Harborside receipt from the flagship location. Card tip line, $45. Underneath, in different ink, someone had written, "Pool total, 12. Daniel pulled up revenue reports and cross-referenced them against the dates listed in the email. On paper, the Harborside was thriving. Sales were up 12% compared to the previous quarter. Online reviews hovered around 4.7 stars, customers praising the ambiance and service. Nothing screamed disaster, but something else snagged his attention. He opened the HR folder, scrolling through termination records. His stomach tightened as a pattern emerged, one he should have noticed months ago, before things spiraled this far. In the past 6 months alone, 15 employees had left that single location. 15! The turnover rate there had exploded, nearly tripling the norm. He clicked into exit interview notes. Most forms listed vague reasons: school schedule changes, family obligations, relocation. But 3 mentioned management issues before the interviewer abruptly ended the comment, noting the employee chose not to elaborate. Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The Harborside had been his family's whole world for decades. His father opened the original Harborside 30 years earlier, a neighborhood bar where regulars knew each other's kids' names and favorite orders. When his father died 2 years ago, Daniel threw himself into expansion to outrun the grief. He'd opened 4 additional locations in rapid succession. 5 restaurants now, more than 80 employees on payroll. He'd handed off daily operations to managers with polished resumes, while he focused on investors, strategy, and growth. Somewhere in the frenzy, he'd drifted dangerously distant. His phone buzzed across the desk, vibrating against a stack of vendor invoices. A text from his business partner flashed on the screen. Board meeting moved to Friday. Need updated projections. Daniel set the phone down without replying. Forecasts could wait. He reopened the employee schedule for the Harborside and scrolled to the manager column. Floor manager, Marcus Delgado. 2.5 years with the company. Hospitality degree, MBA from a respectable program. Daniel himself had signed off on the hire. Marcus's personnel file looked immaculate. Performance reviews praised his confident leadership. Revenue under his supervision had climbed steadily. Labor costs dropped without a dip in customer ratings. Complaint logs even showed a slight decrease. On a spreadsheet, he was the model manager. Efficient, profitable, low drama. And yet, people were leaving in waves. And someone, maybe one of them, had risked retaliation to send Daniel proof that something was very wrong beneath the polished metrics and glowing Yelp comments. Daniel opened the POS system and pulled 8 weeks of tip data. Credit card tips were easy. Digital, traceable, dispensed to servers through payroll. Cash tips, though, were supposed to be counted at the end of each shift and handed directly to staff. The system didn't track those unless someone manually entered them. A hole big enough for abuse. Someone could skim from the top, deposit the difference, and claim customers were just tipping poorly. The numbers on his screen suddenly felt radioactive. He glanced toward the framed quote, still hanging above his late father's old desk. Your people are your business. Protect them like it. The words hit different now, heavy with accusation. Somewhere along the way, Daniel had let the spreadsheets matter more than the humans behind them. He'd let the business grow while his attention drifted to contracts and investors. His father would have been furious. Daniel shut his laptop, staring instead at the photo of the original Harborside, taken opening day. In the photo, his father stood out front in a worn work coat, grinning proudly, arms thrown wide as if hugging the entire block. That same beat-up coat still hung in Daniel's closet at home. His dad had worn it for nearly 20 years, hauling kegs, fixing bar stools, patching drywall himself when money was tight. Daniel suddenly knew exactly what he had to do. He grabbed his phone, opened a new note, and typed 3 words with a racing pulse. Go undercover Thursday. He needed to see the truth with his own eyes, not filtered through reports, not softened by HR summaries. He had to sit at that bar, watch his staff, hear how his manager talked when he thought the owner wasn't within earshot. And if someone was stealing from his people, from his father's legacy, Daniel was going to tear the problem out by the roots. Thursday night at the Harborside arrived like any other, with the predictable surge of the after-work crowd. Around 6 o'clock, the place began to fill. Bankers in crisp suits loosened ties. Lawyers dropped leather briefcases at their feet. Young professionals scanned the cocktail list, chasing happy hour deals before the specials ended. By 7, every table was claimed, and a waiting list stretched at the host stand. Naomi wove through the din with seasoned efficiency, balancing heavy trays, calling out orders, letting muscle memory guide her steps across the polished floor she'd walked 1,000 times. Table 8 needed another round. Table 12 was ready to order appetizers. The 4 top near the window had finally decided on entrees. Naomi juggled it all. 6 tables, 12 guests, dozens of tiny details stacking in her head. Naomi! Marcus called from behind the bar, not looking up from his clipboard. Table 9 is asking for you specifically. They're regulars. On it, she answered without breaking stride. She grabbed a set of menus and headed toward Table 9 to greet the Thompsons. The Thompson couple came in nearly every Thursday. They always ordered the salmon special, always chatted kindly, and almost always tipped around 20%. Evening, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, Naomi said, warmth in her voice despite the fatigue dragging at her. Wouldn't miss our Thursday with our favorite server, Mrs. Thompson replied, eyes crinkling. Naomi took their usual order, keyed it into muscle memory, and headed back to the POS terminal, feeling the weight of the packed dining room pressing in. Marcus stood planted beside the POS station, arms folded as he scanned the floor with a critical gaze. "Busy night?" Naomi commented as she punched in the Thompson's order. "Could be busier," Marcus muttered. "Table 6 is camping. They finished eating half an hour ago." Naomi glanced over at the elderly couple lingering over dessert, talking quietly, hands occasionally brushing. "They're just enjoying their night," she said. "They're taking up prime real estate," Marcus snapped. "I need that table turned, now." "I'll check on them in a few minutes," Naomi replied, keeping her tone level. Marcus's jaw tensed. "Check on them now. We're not running a retirement home." Naomi forced herself not to react. "Of course," she said, grabbing the check presenter. She approached table 6 with a practiced smile. "No rush at all," she said gently, setting the bill down. "Whenever you're ready." The older man looked up, startled. "Are we holding things up?" "I'm sorry, dear." Guilt flashed across Naomi's face. "Not at all," she insisted quickly. "I just wanted to have this ready whenever you need it." The woman fumbled for her purse. "We'll get out of your way," she murmured, already standing, dessert half eaten. "Really, there's no hurry." Naomi tried again, but they were already sliding into their coats. After they left, Naomi collected the cash from the table. The tip was 10%, less than they usually gave. She tucked it into her apron, adding it to the growing wad of bills. By 11, the rush finally broke. Only a few late-night guests lingered, nursing last drinks and stretching out conversations. Marcus gathered the floor staff in the cramped back office. Naomi, Olivia, a younger server named Tyler Grant, and Jenna Collins, the bartender. "Good shift, everyone," Marcus said, dragging the metal tip jar from under the bar. "Let's settle up." The ritual was familiar. One by one, they emptied their cash tips into the jar, as Marcus watched with a neutral expression. Naomi counted out $280 from her apron, the Thompsons, table 8, table 12, the window 4 top, and 3 smaller parties she'd served flawlessly. She'd mentally tracked her tips all night. It was one of the few defenses she had. Olivia added $195. Tyler tossed in $240. Jenna dropped in $120 from the bar. Marcus turned his back to them and began counting slowly, shoulders hunched, the cash hidden from their view. "Slow night," he announced eventually, stuffing bills into neat stacks. Total came to $835. Naomi's inner math screamed that the number was wrong. She'd felt the room buzzing, every table full for hours, but she kept her face blank. Marcus divided the supposed total using some mysterious formula he never explained, then handed each of them a white envelope. Naomi slid hers open. $63. Her expression didn't flicker. No shock, no protest, just the dull weight of recognition. Olivia peeked into her own envelope and frowned. "This feels low for how busy we were," she said, confusion knitting her brow. "Volume doesn't guarantee tips," Marcus replied smoothly. "We had a lot of lousy tippers tonight. You all worked hard. This is just what came in." Tyler shrugged and pocketed his cash. Jenna didn't even bother opening hers yet. Naomi watched Olivia's face carefully as realization dawned, and then retreated. Lesson learned. Don't question Marcus. Just accept whatever he hands you. After the others drifted out, Naomi stood alone at her locker. She opened the thin envelope again, counting the bills with stiff fingers. $63 for a 6-hour shift, 12 tables, immaculate service. She reached behind her spare uniform shirt and pulled out a worn manila envelope labeled in neat handwriting. Caleb's college fund. Inside were 47 scraps of paper, napkins, order tickets, receipts. Each one documented a night like this, dates and estimated tips carefully written down. Naomi grabbed a blank receipt and wrote slowly, pressing the pen harder than necessary. Thursday, November 7th. Estimated about $280 from my tables. Marcus handed me $63. She folded the slip and added it to the stack. 48 nights now. 48 documented discrepancies. She slid the envelope back into its hiding spot, grabbed her coat, and headed out to the back door into the cold. Her aging car wheezed to life on the 3rd attempt, heater long since broken. She sat there a moment, breath fogging the windshield, staring at the glow from the restaurant's back entrance. Then she shifted into drive and headed home to her son. Friday morning, Daniel stood in his closet, staring at a coat he hadn't touched in years. His father's old Carhartt work jacket hung shoved behind tailored suits and pressed dress shirts, faded to a soft brown. Paint stains splattered across the sleeves like a history lesson he'd stopped reading. The jacket was nearly 20 years old, the zipper stubborn halfway up. Daniel slipped it on anyway. It still smelled faintly of sawdust and stale beer. In the mirror, his reflection changed. Gone was the polished operator in custom slacks and a designer watch. In this jacket, paired with beat-up jeans and steel-toe boots, he looked like a contractor heading home from a construction site. Perfect! A 42-year-old man trying to disappear into someone else's life for one crucial night. He'd made his decision sometime between midnight and sunrise. He couldn't march in and confront Marcus directly. If there was criminal behavior, a formal audit would just give the manager time to cover his tracks. HR wouldn't help either. Marcus could charm or intimidate his way through any polite questioning. Daniel needed unfiltered truth. His phone rang again, his business partner. "Daniel, projections?" came the voice. "The board meets in 6 hours." Daniel closed his eyes briefly, then answered anyway. "Tell them something urgent came up," he said. "I'll join remotely on Monday. I need this weekend." "What could possibly be more important than—" his partner started. Daniel ended the call before the argument escalated. The rest of Friday turned into quiet preparation. He studied the harborside schedule. The restaurant ran Tuesday through Sunday, closed Mondays. Marcus worked Thursday through Sunday nights, the busiest shifts. Friday would be the perfect storm. Peak traffic, full staff, nowhere for problems to hide. Daniel drove to a bank across town and withdrew $15 in small bills. He left his credit cards in a desk drawer, took off his Rolex, and slipped off his wedding band, tucking it into a dish by the sink. Anything that screamed wealthy owner stayed behind. He needed to be forgettable. At 6 that evening, he pulled on the old work jacket, the faded jeans, and his oldest pair of Timberlands, the soles beginning to separate near the toes. He studied himself in the hallway mirror. The transformation was complete. His father's voice echoed in his memory, rough from years of shouting orders over bar noise. "You see who people are when they think you're nobody." Daniel grabbed his keys and headed out, heart pounding. He parked 2 blocks away from the harborside, not in a reserved space the staff knew. The November air cut through the thin jacket as he walked, grounding him in the reality of what he was doing. Through the front windows, he saw the familiar Friday chaos. Tables jammed shoulder to shoulder, servers weaving between chairs. The bar lined with customers, glasses flashing under pendant lights. His restaurant, his employees, his father's legacy. And somewhere in there, maybe, someone quietly stealing from the people who made it all work. Daniel took a slow breath, squared his shoulders, and stepped inside. The hostess, Lucia Ramirez, recognized by name from the org chart, looked up with a practiced, welcoming smile. Her expression faltered for half a second when she clocked his clothes, then smoothed back into professionalism. "Good evening. Just you tonight?" "Yeah, just me," Daniel replied, keeping his eyes low. "Perfect," Lucia said. She scanned the crowded room. He watched her skip past the best open tables by the windows, landing instead on a single seat at the bar. "We've got room at the bar, if that's okay." "That's fine," he said. Better, actually. The bar would give him a clear vantage point. Lucia led him through the busy dining room. Daniel kept his head down, acting shy, the worn boots and jacket doing their job. He passed within a few feet of Marcus, who stood near the kitchen pass with a clipboard, checking tickets. Marcus's gaze skimmed right over him. Just another forgettable customer. Daniel took a seat at the bar. Jenna Collins, the bartender, approached with a polite smile. "What can I start you with?" "I'll wait for the server," he said. "Thanks." Jenna nodded and slid away to fill other orders. Daniel surveyed the room. There, Naomi, weaving between tables with a tray of drinks balanced effortlessly, the same steadiness he'd seen in her performance evaluations. She moved with quiet confidence, greeting guests with genuine warmth. She'd be his test, And Marcus's. Time to see who they really were. Naomi finished at table 14, then glanced toward the bar. A new guest waited. Worn jacket, tired eyes, posture that screamed long day. She headed his way. "Hi there," she said, offering a smile, not the fake one she saved for rude customers. "What can I get started for you?" Daniel looked up briefly, then dropped his gaze to the menu as if embarrassed. Hey," he murmured. "What's the least expensive thing here?" Naomi's pen hovered over her pad. No judgment touched her voice. "We've got appetizers starting at $7, she said. "Fries are a favorite, or mozzarella sticks." He swallowed, glancing at his wallet like he was counting dollars. "Just water's okay," he said at last. "And the fries. Small order. That's it." The silence between them stretched. Naomi didn't write anything down yet. She studied him, not with pity, but a kind of weary recognition. She'd been here before, counting pennies, pretending she wasn't. "Rough day?" she asked softly. The question caught him off guard. "Long week, honestly," he heard himself admit. Naomi nodded, decision forming in her eyes. She shifted slightly, leaning against the bar, signaling she wasn't in a hurry. "Mind if I'm straight with you?" she asked. "Sure," he answered, wary. "Kitchen overproduced burgers tonight," she said. "New line cooks still figuring portions. We've got extras." A faint smile tugged at her mouth. "My manager hates food waste," she added. "It's one of the only things he's actually right about." Daniel's guard went up. "Okay, one of those burgers is going in the trash in 10 minutes if nobody eats it," she continued. "Would you help us out?" His instinctive refusal came fast. "I can't," he said quickly. "I don't have money." "No charge," she cut in gently. "It's already made, already paid for. Either it hits the trash or you eat it." She paused, lowering her voice. "And between you and me, you look like you've been working hard. Somebody putting in that kind of effort deserves more than fries and tap water." Daniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His throat tightened unexpectedly, emotion rising from somewhere he hadn't visited in a long time. If this were a movie, the camera would stay on his face for several beats, mouth slightly open, eyes starting to shine as he fought back the reaction. Adam's apple bobbing as he tried to find words. Naomi waited, patient, not rushing him, her expression open. Finally, he managed to whisper. "Why? Why would you do that?" She shrugged one shoulder. "Because everybody who walks through that door deserves to be treated like they matter," she said simply. "It's really that simple. So, can I bring you that burger?" she added. "It's actually really good. House sauce, bacon, aged cheddar, sweet potato fries on the side." He still couldn't form a full sentence, so he just nodded. Naomi's smile warmed. "Perfect. I'll get that going. And hey, if my manager has a problem, you tell him Naomi said it was kitchen waste. He can take it up with me." She scribbled on her pad, tore the ticket, and turned toward the kitchen, weaving back into motion. "Wait," Daniel called softly. She turned. "What's your name again?" "Naomi," she answered. "Naomi Carter." "Thank you, Naomi," he said, voice rougher than he intended. "Seriously, thank you." "You're welcome," she replied, offering a small nod. "Be right back." Then she disappeared into the kitchen's organized chaos. Daniel sat there, stunned. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his water. Someone had just shown him more kindness in 60 seconds than many people managed in years. Marcus had been watching from his vantage point near the kitchen pass. He'd noticed the guy in the beat-up jacket. Exactly the kind of guest he preferred to move in and out quickly. Low spend, likely lousy tipper, cluttering up the bar. And now Naomi was spending way too much time talking to him. Marcus stalked over to the POS station, where Naomi was entering orders. He leaned in, voice sharp and low enough that guests wouldn't hear, but close staff would. "What the hell did you just do?" he demanded. Naomi kept typing, not giving him the satisfaction of flinching. "Kitchen waste," she said calmly. "Extra burger from the new guy." "I know exactly what you did," Marcus hissed. "That burger rings at $24. "It was going to the trash," Naomi replied. "We're allowed to comp reasonable waste." "I don't care what policy claims," Marcus snapped. "You know the rule on unauthorized comps." His arms folded like the closing piece. "That's coming straight out of your tips tonight. $24. he said. A flicker passed across Naomi's face. Hurt, frustration, maybe fear, but it disappeared quickly, replaced by resignation. Fine, she said quietly. Fine, that it? No. Marcus added. You're cut at 9 instead of 11. I don't pay servers to waste time on people who can't tip. Naomi's jaw tightened, but she just nodded once. Got it, she said, submitting the order, then walking away before her temper snapped. As she walked off, Marcus called after her, just loud enough for her to hear. Bleeding hearts end up broke, Carter, he muttered. Naomi didn't respond. At the bar, Daniel had heard every word. From his seat, he had a clear line of sight to the POS station, and Marcus's harsh whisper carried. The emotion that had choked him earlier hardened into something else. Anger. Cold and precise. Naomi wasn't just being generous, she was paying for his dinner out of her stolen tips. She was losing $24 and 2 hours of pay for choosing kindness, and she had accepted it without argument. Daniel's hand curled into a fist on the bar top before he forced it to relax. He needed to stay invisible. Inside, though, something irrevocably shifted. This wasn't just about suspicious deposits and anonymous emails anymore. This was about a woman who valued dignity over self-preservation and a manager who punished her for it. The contrast cut through him like broken glass. 8 minutes later, Naomi returned, balancing a tray. She set the plate before him, and Daniel stared. The Harborside Deluxe burger sat stacked and perfect. Bacon, melted aged cheddar, glossy brioche bun, sweet potato fries arranged like a photograph. Next to it, she'd added a small house salad with vinaigrette on the side. Nestled quietly beside the plate was a tiny ramekin of chocolate mousse. The dessert isn't, he started. I know. She interrupted, smile tugging at her lips. But you said it's been a long week. She continued. Chocolate helps. I stand by that. She topped off his water, this time dropping in a lemon wedge. Enjoy. Let me know if you need anything else, Naomi, he said, stopping her. She paused. I heard what he said, about your tips, about cutting your hours. You didn't have to do this? She met his gaze. Something softened in her expression, but her voice stayed steady. Yeah, I did, she said. For me, anyway. My dad always told me, she went on, that how you treat people when nobody's watching is who you are. Her eyes flicked briefly toward Marcus across the room. And even if someone is watching, it doesn't change what's right. She nodded toward his plate. You matter, she added, like it was the simplest fact in the world. Every person who sits at this bar matters. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise. Before he could respond, she was already moving to another table. Daniel stared at the food. The knot in his throat made it hard to breathe, let alone swallow. He picked up his fork with a shaking hand and took a bite. The burger really was excellent, but that wasn't what nearly undid him. For the next 2 hours, he lingered at the bar, eating slowly, stretching out his meal to watch Naomi work. Every motion told him more about her than any resume ever could have captured on a single page. At 7:30, an older couple walked in. Lutaya started to seat them near the bathroom, the only open table. Naomi intercepted smoothly, her tone light. Actually, table 8 just opened up, she said. I think they'd love the window. The couple beamed as they were led to the best seat in the house. At 8:15, a guy in an expensive suit snapped his fingers at Naomi for more water. She didn't flinch, didn't let irritation show, refilled his glass with a smile. Anything else I can grab for you, sir? She asked, voice even. By 8:50, Marcus cut her, as threatened. Naomi clocked out but didn't rush to leave. She moved from table to table, carefully handing her sections over to Olivia with detailed notes. Table 6 has a dairy allergy. Table 12's celebrating an anniversary. They might want dessert. Table 8 likes extra lemon wedges. Only once everything was squared away did she disappear toward the back, shoulders drooping with exhaustion. Around 9:15, the shift wound down. Marcus called the servers back to the cramped office for tip pool. Daniel slipped off his bar stool, left a $10 bill, 2/3 of his cash, under the edge of the plate, and headed toward the front. Instead of walking straight out, he drifted toward the hallway leading past the office, positioning himself where he could partially see through the narrow window in the door without being obvious. The ritual he'd been warned about began again. One by one, staff emptied their cash into the jar. Marcus turned his back as he counted, shoulders blocking the view. After several minutes, he handed out envelopes. Through the glass, Daniel watched Naomi open hers. Even from a distance, he recognized the slumped acceptance in her posture. He saw the lift of eyebrows that meant the total was no surprise. Later, as she moved to her locker, he saw her pull out that manila envelope, scribble on a scrap, tuck it away carefully. That was enough. Daniel stepped outside into the night. He walked the 2 blocks to his car and sat there in the dark, fingers gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. He didn't need more rumors or second-hand accounts. He'd seen enough with his own eyes. The kindness, the theft, the exhaustion on faces that had once looked hopeful in their hiring photos. The pattern in the anonymous email now felt real, no longer numbers and blurry screenshots attached to a subject line. Saturday morning, Daniel arrived at his office by 7, clutching takeout coffee he barely tasted. He'd gotten maybe 3 hours of sleep, his mind replaying Naomi's words on a loop. "Everybody who sits at this bar matters," he called his IT director at home, voice clipped. "I need security footage from the Harborside back office camera," he said. "Last 8 weeks." There was a long pause. "That's a lot of Marcus on tape," the director said carefully. "Is everything okay?" "Pull it," Daniel replied. "Don't tell anyone. I need it by noon." "Understood," came the answer. At noon, Daniel sat alone in his locked office, blinds drawn, the world outside reduced to muted city noise. His laptop screen was split. On one side, the back office camera feed. On the other, the list of suspicious bank deposits from the anonymous email. He'd scribbled dates on a yellow legal pad. October 31st, November 3rd, November 7th, each circled 3 times in red ink. He scrubbed through footage from October 31st, fast-forwarding through hours of routine movement. Staff clocking in, Marcus pacing with his clipboard, Jenna popping in to grab change for the register. Then, late at night, the tip jar appeared on screen. Daniel slowed the playback, leaning closer. He watched Marcus empty the jar onto the desk, stacks of bills fanning out. The staff waited around him, posture deferential. Marcus's back blocked most of the money, but his hands moved with practiced ease. Daniel watched the manager count, then subtly slide a portion of the cash into a pile closer to his side of the desk, shielding it with his wrist. When he finished, he stuffed that smaller pile into his pocket before turning around with a smile and announcing the total to the team. Daniel froze the video, replayed the motion, then replayed it again, each time feeling his stomach sink further. It was the same sleight of hand he'd suspected, now captured in grainy black and white. He jumped ahead to footage from November 3rd. Different night. Same pattern. Marcus joked with the staff as he gathered the jar, then turned his back to them to count. Again, the subtle separation of bills. Again, the quiet pocketing of cash before envelopes were handed out. Daniel's chest burned. He flipped back to the deposit screenshot. $890 on November 3rd. It lined up neatly. His father's framed quote on the wall now felt like an accusation carved in stone. Daniel thought of Naomi's manila envelope, of Caleb's name written in careful letters, of 48 nights of handwritten evidence she'd hidden behind a spare uniform. She'd suspected for a long time. She'd been documenting it longer than the anonymous emailer. How many others had just walked away, deciding it was easier to quit than fight? He scrubbed forward to November 7th, the night marked in Naomi's newest note and the email attachments. The date glowed in tiny white numbers on the screen. He watched the Harborside's back office fill with familiar faces, exhausted but hopeful as they emptied their tips into the jar. He watched Marcus repeat the same routine, counting with his body turned just enough to hide his hands. When the envelopes were passed out, he paused the video on Naomi's face. No surprise, no outrage, just acceptance sharpened into focus. Daniel clenched his jaw. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was systematic. He rewound the tape to just before the counting started. On a hunch, he checked the tiny timestamp in the corner and compared it to the bank screenshot on his desk. Cash skimming at midnight. Deposit processed the next afternoon for a suspiciously similar amount. The pattern was impossible to ignore now. Daniel's pulse hammered as he jotted down notes, connecting lines between dates, footage, and bank entries. He forced himself to stay methodical. Anger wouldn't fix this. Careful documentation would. He clicked back to the beginning of the October 31st recording. This time, he watched everything more slowly. The way Marcus handled the tip jar, the casual confidence in his posture, the resigned expressions on his staff's faces. He took screenshots of keyframes, saving them into a folder marked with a bland name no one would notice. Every replay deepened his certainty. This wasn't a one-off lapse in judgment. It was a deliberate system, refined over weeks, maybe months. Daniel's cursor hovered over the play button as he prepared to scrutinize another angle. He dragged the timeline back a few minutes further, to the moment the staff first filed into the office on October 31st. Jenna laughed at something Naomi said. Olivia leaned against the doorframe, shoes dangling from 2 fingers. Marcus entered last, already reaching for the jar. Daniel exhaled slowly and hit play, bracing himself to watch the scene unfold again, this time with newly sharpened eyes and the weight of responsibility pressing down, harder than any board meeting ever had. The first clip's timestamp read 11:47 p. Marcus stepped into the back office alone after the shift, glancing over his shoulder to make sure the door latched. He dragged the tip jar from beneath the counter. With his back angled toward the camera, his hands remained in view. Bills slid from jar to desk as his fingers moved fast, separating and stacking. Then he peeled off a chunk, slipped it into his jacket pocket, calmly regrouped what remained, stuffed envelopes, and strolled out. The whole process took barely 3 minutes, smooth as muscle memory. Daniel's stomach rolled. He skipped ahead to November 3rd. Same sequence. Marcus alone, counting with casual focus, quietly skimming before dividing the leftovers. This time, the angle was better, and Daniel could tell he'd taken roughly a third before stacking envelopes. November 7th, the Thursday, Daniel had sat at the bar in disguise, looked identical. Marcus's hand sliding bills away like this was just another nightly chore. Daniel compiled every clip into a single folder, watching his anger harden into resolve. He counted 43 separate incidents across 8 weeks. Every shift Marcus supervised followed the same choreography: jar, desk, skim, distribute. Using visible bill denominations, Daniel built rough estimates. Over those 8 weeks alone, Marcus had likely siphoned around $12,800 from the tip pool, maybe more. Saturday afternoon, Daniel called his attorney and asked to meet somewhere far from downtown and familiar eyes. They met at a quiet coffee shop across town, tucked in a neighborhood where no harborside staff would casually wander in. Daniel handed over a flash drive and a printed summary. The lawyer watched several clips, jaw tightening. "This is felony wage theft," he said finally. "If you file with the Department of Labor, they'll pursue it. But my advice? Handle the internal mess first." Daniel didn't hesitate. "I want him prosecuted." The attorney nodded slowly. "Then we document absolutely everything. Security footage is powerful, but we'll need more scaffolding underneath it. Financial records that line up with the skimming. Testimony from current and former staff. Evidence of the likely amounts taken, not just that something vanished." Daniel nodded, already planning. Sunday morning, he locked himself in his office with coffee, spreadsheets, and a gnawing sense of responsibility. He pulled POS logs for every shift Marcus had managed over the last 18 months and lined them up against payroll reports. The software tracked credit card tips automatically. Those flowed straight to staff paychecks. Cash tips, though, remained a black hole, supposed to be counted and handed out at the end of each shift, never entering the system. But Daniel could approximate them. He examined credit card tip totals and applied industry ratios. If credit card tips hit 400 on a given night, cash tips were probably around 250. He created a spreadsheet. Dates, credit tips, estimated cash, projected total distributions. Then he laid the anonymous email's bank screenshots beside his spreadsheet. November 7th. POS showed $835 in credit card tips. Using his formula, cash should have been around 400. Total, roughly 1,235. Marcus had told the staff the entire pool was only 835. He'd lied about the credit card tips and swallowed every dollar of estimated cash. Daniel stared at the columns, feeling the burn of humiliation on behalf of his people. On November 8th, Marcus had deposited exactly $1,235 into his personal account. Daniel checked October 31st. The spreadsheet showed the same discrepancy, roughly $1,235 missing. The bank record, a deposit for that exact amount. November 3rd, discrepancy around $890. Deposit on November 4th, $890 flat. No rounding, no coincidence. It was a pattern stamped in numbers, a smoking gun that tied the grainy footage directly to Marcus's bank history. Sunday evening, Daniel started calling former employees using contact information from HR files. 3 ex-servers agreed to talk. One, a woman named Carla Jimenez, who'd quit 3 months earlier, didn't hesitate. Marcus skimmed about 40% of tips, she said. He called it a management fee. When I asked if that was legal, my best shifts vanished from the schedule. I couldn't keep my rent paid, so I left. 2 others echoed the same story. Different details, same intimidation. By Sunday night, Daniel had built an airtight case. 43 recorded instances of skimming in 8 weeks. An estimated $31,200 stolen from 4 current employees over 18 months. Bank deposits that mirrored missing amounts down to the dollar. POS logs and schedule changes backing every claim. He labeled a digital folder Harborside Internal Investigation and dropped everything into it. Video files, spreadsheets, transcripts of calls. Monday morning, he sent a calendar invite. Mandatory staff meeting. Owner will address concerns. Marcus saw the invite pop up and smirked. Finally, the elusive owner was making an appearance, probably to celebrate their recent numbers and maybe announce a bonus. Monday at 10 a.m., 8 people filed into the Harborside small conference room. Naomi, Olivia, Jason, Jenna the bartender, hostess Lucia, line cook Tommy, another kitchen hand, and Marcus himself. The air crackled with unease. Marcus sat at the head of the table like it belonged to him, legs crossed, posture relaxed. Naomi settled near the back, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Being called in on her day off sent anxiety skittering up her spine. Had she messed up? Was this about the burger? The door opened. Daniel Harper walked in wearing a tailored suit, hair neatly styled, every trace of the worn jacket gone. He shut the door behind him and stepped to the front. Silence dropped. Naomi went pale. She stared, realization slamming into her. The man from Friday night. Marcus's brow furrowed. "Who are you?" he asked, annoyed at the interruption. Daniel held his gaze. "I'm Daniel Harper. I own this restaurant." The room's energy shifted instantly, tension stretching like a wire. Naomi's pulse roared in her ears. "Thursday night," Daniel began, voice calm. "I sat at that bar in an $8 work coat and ordered water and fries." Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. She couldn't look away from him, embarrassment and dread mixing in her chest. "Naomi," Daniel said, turning toward her, his tone gentler. "You asked if I'd had a long day. I said it had been a long week. You told me the kitchen had overproduced burgers and asked if I'd help by eating one before it went to waste." "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know. I never meant—" "Don't apologize," Daniel cut in softly. "You didn't do anything wrong. Just let me finish." He took a breath, bracing the rest of the room. "You brought me a $24 burger," he continued. "Upgraded the sides, even added chocolate mousse. You comped all of it. You told me nobody should get stuck with just fries when they've clearly been grinding all week." The room stayed utterly still except for Naomi's shaky breathing. Daniel's gaze shifted to Marcus, his expression sharpening. "Your manager overheard and told you that meal was coming out of your tips, $24. Then he cut your shift by 2 hours as punishment. You said fine both times," Daniel went on, "and you served me anyway. You told me I mattered." Naomi's tears slid silently now. Daniel faced Marcus fully. "Thursday night, you told staff it was a slow night. Claimed total tips were $835. That accurate, Marcus?" The manager shifted, a sheen of sweat forming. "Yeah, it was soft. People weren't tipping." "My system," Daniel said, "shows $835 in credit card tips alone. plus an estimated $400 in cash. That's approximately $1,235. Daniel continued. Can you explain why you reported 835? Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it as no excuse surfaced. Daniel turned his laptop toward the group and hit play. The conference room watched as Marcus, on screen, entered the back office, pulled out the tip jar, and went through the same ritual, counting, palming a stack, pocketing it, then calmly stuffing envelopes. Audible gasps rippled around the table, disbelief turning to anger. 43 times, Daniel said quietly over the footage. Across 8 weeks, my IT director flagged every instance. Clip after clip showed the same motion. Marcus checking the door, shoulders hunched just so, hands moving bills from table to pocket like it was as natural as breathing. You stole an estimated $12,800 in 8 weeks, Daniel said. When I expanded the audit to the last 18 months, the total climbed to around $31,200 from 4 people. Olivia wiped at her cheeks, tears spilling over. Jason's jaw flexed with restrained fury. Jenna stared straight ahead, expression blank with shock. Daniel brought up a new spreadsheet. Naomi Carter, he said. Approximately $11,200 stolen from your tips over 18 months. Naomi made a strangled sound, part sob, part disbelief. Jason Grant, $8,100. Olivia Reyes, $6,800. Jenna Collins, $5,100. Marcus swallowed. Those are just estimates, he protested weakly. No, Daniel replied, voice turning cold. They're calculations built on POS data and your own bank records. He held up a printout. November 7th, you deposited $1,235, the exact discrepancy between what should have been distributed and what staff actually received. October 31st, same pattern. November 3rd, 890 missing, 890 deposited, down to the dollar. Marcus's confident facade crumpled. The numbers had cornered him in a cage he'd built himself. Naomi? Daniel said gently. Do you have anything you want to share? Every eye turned to her. For a moment she stayed frozen, heart banging against her ribs. Then she pushed herself to her feet, legs unsteady, and walked out into the hall. Through the glass, they watched her open her locker, reach behind her extra uniform, and pull out a battered manila envelope. She returned and set it on the table, label facing up. Caleb's college fund. Naomi opened the envelope and spilled its contents. 48 scraps of paper, napkins, tickets, torn receipts across the table. I've been tracking everything, she said, voice trembling but clear. Every shift for 9 weeks, every dollar I counted from my tables versus what Marcus handed me. She lifted one slip. Thursday, November 7th. My tables, about 280. Marcus gave me 63. Another. October 30th, estimated 245, received 71. Another. October 23rd, around 310, got 89. She looked straight at Marcus now, fear replaced by something steelier. I didn't know if anyone would believe me, she said. But I figured someone had to, someday. So I wrote it down. Daniel skimmed several notes, then placed them beside his spreadsheet. Total documented discrepancy, he said. Around 8,400 in 9 weeks. Marcus lurched in his seat. You can't prove... I have security footage, Daniel cut in. POS logs, bank records, testimony from 3 former employees, and Naomi's notes matching our data. Daniel's voice became glacial. You're done here. Effective immediately. He nodded toward the door. Security is outside to escort you out. Marcus's face drained, then flushed angry red. You can't just... If you contest this termination, step onto this property again, or contact any current or former employees, Daniel said. I will file criminal charges for felony wage theft. The Department of Labor already has our preliminary report. 2 security guards entered. Get him out of my restaurant, Daniel said quietly. Marcus looked around for support. For Naomi, for Jason, for Jenna, for Olivia. No one met his eyes. The guards took his arms and walked him out. The door shut with a final heavy click. Silence pressed in. Daniel remained at the front of the room, shoulders squared. What happened here? He said finally, voice low but steady. Is my failure. Naomi blinked up at him, startled. I let myself drift too far away, chasing expansion and board meetings and revenue graphs. I forgot what my father built this place on. Taking care of the people who keep it running. Daniel continued. That ends today, not with speeches, with changes. He opened another folder, laying documents on the table. First change, effective immediately. No more forced tip pooling. Company policy has always been that tips belong to the server unless they voluntarily pool. Marcus twisted that. From now on, your tips are yours. If you want to share, it's by choice and in the open. Naomi swiped at her eyes, trying to keep up. Second, Daniel said, we're upgrading the POS system. Starting next week, it'll track both credit and cash tips by server. You'll each have a login to see exact totals per shift. No more black box at the end of the night. A murmur went around the table. Third, he added, weekly tip reconciliation reports. Every Sunday night, you'll see a posted report. Total tips collected, total distributed. Any discrepancy over $10 gets flagged. Daniel moved around the table, making eye contact with each person. Fourth, we're launching an anonymous reporting line. There'll be a poster in the break room with a QR code and phone number. Any concern, scheduling, pay, harassment, treatment, you can report anonymously. Those come straight to me, not your manager. Jenna spoke up softly. What if management retaliates? Then they're gone, Daniel said. Zero tolerance. It's written into your updated handbook. He slid printed copies across the table. Retaliation for good faith reporting is immediate termination with cause, he added. Staff members exchanged stunned looks. Fifth, Daniel continued. I'll be doing unannounced walkthroughs every quarter. Not to scare you, just to talk. With dishwashers, bussers, cooks, servers, bartenders, not just managers. He paused. I should have been doing that all along. He took a breath. Sixth, you'll elect a server representative. Someone you choose will sit in on monthly management meetings, weigh in on schedules, policies, anything impacting front-of-house staff. Olivia hesitantly raised her hand. What about the money? She asked. What Marcus already took. Do we just lose it? Daniel reached into his briefcase and pulled out several thick envelopes, each sealed and labeled. I've already audited the last 18 months, he said. Every stolen dollar is being repaid with 18% interest for the time you've been without it. He looked at Olivia. Nobody here should have to finance someone else's theft. The room's tension shifted toward stunned hope. Olivia Reyes, Daniel announced, extending an envelope. 6,800 stolen. With interest, that's 8,024. She opened it, saw the check, and burst into tears. Jason Grant, he said, handing over the next. 8,100 stolen, 9,558 with interest. Jason's hands shook as he stared at the number. Jenna Collins, Daniel continued. 5,100 taken, 6,018 repaid. Jenna clapped a hand over her mouth, shoulders trembling. Finally, Daniel turned toward Naomi. Naomi Carter, he said softly. 11,200 stolen from you. With interest, 13,216. Naomi's knees nearly gave out as she took the envelope. She opened it, eyes scanning the check, disbelief flooding her face. Olivia and Jenna flanked her instinctively, steadying her as her body shook. I can't, Naomi whispered. I don't know what to say. You don't owe me gratitude, Daniel replied. This was yours all along. But that's not the only reason we're here, Daniel added. Naomi forced herself to look up through blurred vision. I'm offering you the role of assistant general manager, he said, effective immediately. The room's stunned quiet deepened. Naomi shook her head. I'm just a server, she stammered. I don't know how to— You're not just anything, Daniel said firmly. You documented a pattern for 48 days. You showed kindness when it cost you. You protected newer staff. That's leadership. I don't know systems or— she started. You know how to treat people, Daniel interrupted. How to stand up quietly, consistently, when something's wrong. How to put principle over fear. He slid a printed offer across the table. Assistant General Manager, 35% salary increase, full benefits, including full health coverage with dependent care. He paused deliberately. That means your son's insulin, supplies, doctor visits, specialists, covered. No copay for chronic care. Naomi's breath hitched. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. She dropped into her chair as sobs tore out of her chest. Not polite tears, but deep, shaking ones. Years of fear about Caleb's medication, every refill, every bill, every what-if, cracked open. Olivia wrapped her arms around Naomi, holding her like a sister. Jenna leaned in, crying too. Even Jason blinked hard, eyes glassy. Daniel gave them space, then continued quietly. There's also a $3,000 annual education stipend, he said. For training, classes, or, he glanced at the envelope on the table, Caleb's real college fund. Naomi clutched the check in one hand, the manila envelope in the other, like lifelines. Daniel stepped closer and extended his hand. Will you help me keep this place what it's supposed to be? He asked. She stared at his hand through tears, then at her co-workers' faces. Olivia's encouragement, Jenna's pride, Jason's nod. Slowly, still trembling, Naomi stood and placed her hand in his. Yes, she managed. The room erupted in applause. Tommy whistled from the back, grinning. Welcome to management, Daniel said, giving her hand a firm shake. We've got a lot to fix. Naomi nodded, still overwhelmed. But beneath the shock, something steadier flickered to life. Hope. She looked around the room at the people who'd become her second family. For the first time in years, the tight coil of fear in her chest began to unwind. She wasn't alone anymore. 3 months later, the harborside looked the same on the surface, but felt completely different underneath. Naomi stood by the kitchen pass in a navy button-up with Assistant GM stitched neatly over the pocket. 2 new servers, both college students, stood beside her, notebooks ready. Everyone who walks through that door matters, Naomi said, repeating the line that had become her compass. Doesn't matter if they're in a 3-piece suit or paint-splattered sweatpants. They get the same respect. That's non-negotiable. One of the new hires, Katie, raised a hand. What if they're rude? She asked quietly. You still treat them with dignity, Naomi replied. That's your choice, not theirs. My dad used to say the real test of character is how you treat people who can't do anything for you. She smiled. Be the version of yourself you're proud of, even when they're not giving you a reason. Katie nodded, scribbling notes. Okay, Naomi said. Let's walk through the POS system. This is how tip tracking works now. She led them toward the terminal near the bar. Across the room, Daniel sat in a corner booth with Olivia and Jason, reviewing the weekly tip reconciliation report spread across the table. Columns of numbers were highlighted, clean and easy to follow. Last week you pulled in $380, he said to Olivia, tapping the printout. That match your portal? She opened the staff app on her phone. Yep, $380 exactly. Good, Daniel said. Any mismatch, even small, you come to Naomi or me. We'd rather overcheck than miss something. He turned to Jason. And you? $420, Jason said, glancing at his phone. System's dead on. He hesitated. Can I ask about the anonymous report line? Always, Daniel said. Does anyone actually read those? Jason asked. Daniel pulled out his phone and opened a dashboard screen. I read every single one, he said. Naomi and I review them together weekly. Last month we got 23. Most were shout-outs. A couple about the kitchen being too hot at lunch. We fixed the AC. One about a delivery truck blocking the staff entrance, Daniel added. We changed the vendor's delivery window. Olivia frowned. Nobody got in trouble for reporting. Not one person, Daniel said. That's the point. We want to know what's broken before it becomes a crisis. At the bar, Jenna trained a new bartender, walking him through closing procedures. At the end of your shift, she explained, the system calculates your tips. You log in, confirm the number, and it goes straight to payroll. No jars, no middlemen. Near a back booth, 7-year-old Caleb sat with a workbook open, pencil tapping against the page as he solved math problems. His insulin pump peeked from under his t-shirt, the beeping device that once kept Naomi awake at night, now covered under her benefits. Tommy emerged from the kitchen carrying a plate of fries. Brain fuel, he announced, setting them beside Caleb's notebook. Thanks, Chef Tommy. Caleb grinned. Mom says you make the best fries in Boston. Your mom's got good taste. Tommy chuckled. How's the homework? Hard, Caleb admitted. But Mom says hard stuff's usually worth doing. She's right, Tommy said, ruffling his hair before heading back into the heat of the line. Naomi paused at the pass, watching her son crunch fries and lean over his math, healthy and safe, not tethered to a crisis budget anymore. Gratitude hit her so fiercely it almost hurt. At 7 p.m., a man in paint-splattered work clothes walked in, shoulders slumped from a long day. The new hostess, Angela, started guiding him toward a cramped table near the restroom. Naomi intercepted with an easy smile. Actually, table 8 just opened up, she said. Much better view. The man blinked, surprised. For me? For you, she said. Everyone gets our best. Enjoy. As she walked back toward the POS, Olivia caught her eye and grinned, both of them remembering another night, another man in worn boots. This wasn't a special exception anymore. This was simply how the Harborside operated. Later that evening, Daniel dropped in for one of his unannounced walkthroughs. Instead of beelining for the office, he headed straight for the kitchen. How's everyone hanging in tonight? He called over the sizzle of pans. He shook hands with the dishwasher. Diego, right? You settling in okay? Yeah, Mr. Harper, the young man said. Really good. Naomi checks on us every shift, asks what we need. Daniel nodded, pleased. He found Naomi near the service station, clipboard in hand, checking on table times. I'm hearing you're making the rounds, Daniel said. Naomi shrugged. Just doing my job. Checking on dishwashers and hosts isn't written anywhere in your job description, Daniel pointed out. Naomi smiled. My dad used to say taking care of people isn't a bullet point. It's a baseline. Daniel laughed softly. I wish I'd met him. Naomi's expression grew gentle. You sort of did, she said. Every time you choose people over profit, you're meeting the version of him I grew up with. She gestured around the room, the staff working together, Caleb happily finishing homework, the anonymous report poster on the wall. What we're building here, she said quietly. That's the kind of legacy he wanted for me. And now it's part of yours, too. Daniel looked around his father's old dream, now evolved into something bigger than either of them. It wasn't flawless. There were still late deliveries, customer complaints, scheduling headaches. But the core was sound again, and that, he realized, mattered more than perfection. 6 months after that first undercover Thursday, Naomi stood at the kitchen pass during lunch service, clipboard in hand, calling out ticket times with calm authority. The Harborside hummed, guests laughing, servers moving in fluid patterns, kitchen tickets spitting neatly from the printer. Marcus had pleaded guilty to wage theft and fraud. The Department of Labor pursued the case, and he wound up with probation and restitution orders. He would never manage a staff again. But Daniel knew Marcus wasn't the only problem. In the month since, Daniel had dug into national reports. He'd learned that tens of millions of workers in the U.S. experienced wage theft every year. Stolen tips, shaved hours, unpaid overtime. Stories like Naomi's weren't rare outliers. They were heartbreakingly common. Billions of dollars vanished annually, more than what was taken in all reported robberies combined. Most victims stayed quiet, afraid of retaliation or convinced nobody would listen. That silence, Daniel realized, was the real accomplice. That needed to change. Now he sat at the same bar stool where he'd once hunched in his father's jacket, looking straight into the lens of a mounted camera. A small documentary crew had set up lights in the corner. If you're dealing with wage theft, Daniel said, his voice steady, you're not alone. A lot of you watching this are living it. He folded his hands on the bar. First thing, document everything. Naomi's envelope didn't just protect her. It helped confirm what happened to 3 co-workers. Write down your hours, he continued. Take photos of schedules. Save copies of receipts or pay stubs. Your phone can be a shield. He glanced toward a lower third graphic the producers planned to overlay. Second, learn your rights. The U.S. Department of Labor's website has clear information on wage laws. You don't need a lawyer to file a complaint, though it can help. Third, understand you're part of a huge group, not an isolated problem. You're not the only one fighting this. If you're an owner or manager watching, Daniel added, looking straight into the camera, your people are your business. Protect them fiercely. Don't just trust that things are fine. Build systems that make theft and retaliation nearly impossible. Transparent tracking, independent reporting, regular conversations with staff, not just supervisors. He took a breath. And if you manage people, remember Naomi. She chose to treat a stranger with respect, even when it cost her. That's not softness. That's real strength. On screen, text appeared. National Wage Theft Hotline, followed by the number the crew had researched. A simple line, but heavy with possibility. Daniel slid off the bar stool and crossed the floor toward Naomi, who was checking on a table near the windows. She smiled when she saw him, gave a small wave, then turned toward the entrance as the bell chimed. A woman in paint-streaked jeans and a faded hoodie stepped inside, shoulders tired, hands chapped, eyes scanning the room nervously. "Hey there," Naomi said warmly, approaching with a menu. "Welcome to the Harborside. What can I get started for you today?" The woman hesitated. "Honestly, I'm just grabbing something small. Long day on a job site." Naomi's smile didn't waver. "Got plenty of options," she said. "And the view's on the house." She led her toward a good table, the same way she would any high-rolling banker. The cameras kept rolling, but Naomi wasn't performing. This was simply who she'd chosen to be. Daniel watched from the bar, a quiet satisfaction settling over him. Systems were in place. Policies had teeth now, but more importantly, the culture had shifted. Servers looked out for each other. Back-of-house staff spoke up when something felt off. And at the center of it all, Naomi moved calmly through the chaos, anchoring the team with the same steady kindness she'd offered a stranger in a ratty jacket months before. The difference now was simple. She didn't have to fight alone. Later, when the documentary team wrapped for the day, one of the producers turned to Daniel. "Why let us show all this?" she asked. "Most owners would hide it." Daniel glanced toward the pass, where Naomi was laughing with Tommy over a misfired ticket. "Because this isn't just my story," he said. "It's theirs, and it's a lot of other people's too. If even one worker watching realizes they're not crazy or alone, it's worth the discomfort." He meant every word. As the crew packed up equipment, Naomi walked over, wiping her hands on a bar towel. "How'd it go?" she asked. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." Daniel chuckled. "Talking to a camera's easier than talking to investors, weirdly," he said. "At least the camera doesn't interrupt." Naomi smirked. "You did good. My dad would have liked that bit about systems, not speeches." "Still following his rulebook, huh?" Daniel asked. "Every day," she replied. "We just added a few chapters." A few guests glanced curiously at the lingering lights and cables, but most simply enjoyed their meals. Life at the Harborside went on. Tickets fired, plates landed, drinks poured. The difference was invisible on a Yelp page, but obvious in the way staff moved, the way they spoke up, the ease in their faces. The restaurant wasn't flawless. It was honest. And that, Naomi thought as she headed back to the floor, was more valuable than any polished illusion Marcus had tried to maintain. Months later, whenever Naomi passed the framed photo of Daniel's father in his old work coat, she felt a quiet thread connecting past and present. A man who'd built a neighborhood bar from nothing. A son who'd almost lost his way to spreadsheets and expansion. A staff who refused to let their dignity be optional. Wage theft still happened everywhere, she knew. But here at least they'd drawn a line. One envelope, one undercover night. One conversation at a bar had changed everything. And so, on another ordinary afternoon, with lunch service humming, and Caleb asking Tommy about fries versus roasted potatoes, Naomi stepped toward the door as it opened again. Another customer. Another story she'd never know. "Hi there," she said, voice warm but steady. "Welcome in. What can I get started for you?" Behind her, the cameras had long since gone, the documentary edited and aired. But the real work wasn't on screen. It was right here. Each shift, each choice, each person. Out at the bar, Daniel glanced up at the security camera, the same type that had once caught Marcus's sleight of hand and now mostly captured normal, boring shifts. That was the goal. No more secrets bleeding people dry in the shadows. Just honest work, fair pay, and the occasional hard conversation handled in the open. He checked the latest tip report on his phone, saw the clean match between numbers, and allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. This was how it should be. Somewhere on a TV screen in another city, his documentary segment replayed. A worker paused mid-scroll, listening as Daniel talked about documenting hours and learning rights. A restaurant owner grabbed a notebook, jotting down ideas about tracking systems. A server in a different state realized for the first time that their management fee wasn't normal, just exploitative. Ripples spreading outward, tiny and invisible, but real. Back at the harborside, Naomi topped off a guest's water and straightened a wobbly chair. At the end of the night, she'd still be tired. Her feet would still ache. Some tables would still be rude, but the money in her account would match the work she'd done, and her son's medication would be secure. That was enough, more than enough. As another guest in worn clothes stepped through the door, Naomi met them with the same genuine smile she'd offered Daniel months ago. "Hey there," she said. "What can I get started for you today?" The guest hesitated, glancing at the menu like they were doing math. Naomi waited, patient, no judgment in her eyes. Whatever they ordered, feast or fries, she'd treat them like they belonged. Because they did. Everyone who walked through that door mattered. Everyone! Lesson 1. Every person at the table has worth. For those of us in our 60s, 70s, and beyond, we know what it feels like to be judged too quickly. By our age, our clothes, or the size of our social security check. When Naomi looked at the broke man in the worn jacket and work boots, she didn't see trash to be cleared from a fancy bar. She saw a human being who'd had a long, hard week. Her simple choice, a hot burger instead of cold fries and tap water, wasn't charity. It was a reminder of something many of your generation were raised on. Every person who walks through the door deserves to be treated like they matter, no matter what's in their wallet. Lesson 2. Quiet courage can take down hidden theft. Older Americans understand paperwork and proof. You've kept bills, bank slips, and tax returns in neat folders for decades. Naomi did the same with her manila envelope for Caleb's college fund. Every napkin, every scrap was a little act of courage. And when Daniel finally paid attention, her notes, the security videos, and the bank deposits all came together like pieces of a puzzle. The lesson for younger workers, and a reminder for your generation, is simple. Write it down, save your records, and don't assume you're powerless when someone in charge is skimming from those who can least afford it. Lesson 3. Real leadership means fixing the system, not just the villain. Daniel could have fired Marcus and walked away. Many owners do. Instead, he did something elders recognize as true responsibility. He said, "This is my failure," and changed the system. No more secret tip jars, clear reports, an anonymous hotline, a worker's voice at the management table. Then he did something even rarer. He lifted up the quiet hero, Naomi, and gave her the authority and benefits to protect others. For those thinking about the legacy they'll leave behind, this story reminds us, it's not enough to be decent in private. Real leadership builds structures that keep people safe long after we're gone. After hearing Naomi and Daniel's story, I'd love to know what it stirs up in you. Have you ever seen a boss, supervisor, or business quietly shave pay, tips, or hours from people who could barely make rent? And did anyone have the courage to stand up the way Naomi did? If you were sitting at that bar in your work boots, how would you want to be treated? Share your experiences and thoughts in the comments. And if this spoke to you, please like the video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and pass it on so more people can learn their worth and their rights.